Well, it's February 20th, 2016, and true to our New England weather, crazy again. It's like 50 degrees out today, and all the snow is melting, and the ice on the pond isn't even safe. And just like a week ago, we had a deep freeze, so... And a little while before that, we had another one of these crazy warm days, so it's kind of seesawing up and down, but I'm going to take advantage of this warm weather today, and I'm going to try and take this motor off of this boat and get it down the basement and start working on it, because I'd like to get this motor ready for spring if it's going to be a runner. And if it's not going to be a runner, I at least want to know so I can stop messing with it. So before we can do that, I think what I'm going to do, rather than dealing with the Oliver loader, I picked up a post hole digger, and that doubles as a boom pole attachment for the 3-point hitch, and it should fit my blue Ford there, so I think I'm going to start that up. Alright, let's see if the battery is good in this thing. Cold start. This hasn't started in a while, although it's not very cold today. What a good tractor. Alright, so this is the post hole digger attachment I scored this winter off of a Facebook posting of all places. And I forgot what he was asking for it, but I guess he had a couple of no-shows, so I contacted him, and I think I got it for $140 if memory serves me. So, don't even know if it works. When I picked it up from him, noticed that at some point he had broken a shear pin and just threw a big lag bolt in there. And one of the screws on the top cover for the gear case is backed out part way, and I'm kind of wondering about that. And I haven't seen it run, so hoping it doesn't have a broken gear case. He only had the one auger. It's got kind of a point on the bottom there. But he also had the drive shaft with the PTO guard on it. And he had said that a couple of people actually just wanted to buy that from him, which I could understand why they would want to. But, so that's that. And then, of course, it consists of basically this U-shaped bracket here. And then, of course, this big pole assembly right here. And this is a Lineback line cutter. Sorry, auger, post hole digger. Which I looked up online, and I guess these aren't a very expensive unit, but they also aren't like a really cheap like Land Pride. I guess they're a step maybe above that. Judging from the way that there's a lot of wear around that whole position right there, I'd say that this thing had gotten some pretty decent usage. But on the far end of this thing, there's actually a hook, so you can actually just take the head off. Like, we're gonna just go leave the head off, and we're gonna put this bracket and this on, and we'll have a boom pole. Well, since that's the maximum elevation right there, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to do anything with this boom pole. I might have to go get the Oliver after all and use the front end loader and a chain fall. But for starters, I guess I could try and release the locks here and try and get this motor a little more vertical and see how it looks. But I just saw something that's just really disconcerting. Just came over here on this side, happened to be looking at the lower unit, and can see, if I get the sun shining on it, there is a huge crack in the case. It starts up here somewhere, runs down here, runs all the way down, looks like it runs all the way down over towards the front, splits off over here, and there is either oil, there is some kind of fluid leaking out of it, and I'm almost positive that wasn't there. So I think what has happened is, I think that there may have been water in this gear case, and it may have actually froze and cracked it. So that's really unfortunate, because if that's the case, pardon the pun, that's something I probably could have avoided if I had drained the fluids initially when I got the unit, just assuming it was going to need a fluid change anyways. And if I had found a bunch of water in there, well, then, you know, I would have drained it off. And even if I left it empty, at least then it wouldn't have frozen and cracked. But I'm pretty sure that's what ended up happening here. So this might be a non-starter right there. Lower unit for this thing used would cost more money than the whole motor's really worth to me. But I could always fire up that TIG welding setup that I haven't used yet. This is an aluminum casting, I assume, so, you know, it's possible that I might be able to repair this. I mean, at this point, since it's junk anyways, what harm is there in trying? So there's a couple of locking tabs, one here and one on the other side. I just got to take the weight off the motor, weight off of them, and flip them. Hopefully they're not rusted in position. And separating the motor from the boat is actually pretty easy. It's just all of the electrical terminates at this connector right here, and you just got this one big gigunda plug that you literally unplug. That separates all of the electrical from the boat. Well, with maybe the exception of the battery. I'm not sure whether or not one of these two big pins was actually all the starting current goes through those or not, because I found this just laying loose. But I actually think this is coming from the starter solenoid and going to the missing starter. So I think, yeah. Alright, so here's the power coming in. Yeah, that goes to that plug too. So everything. So you unplug this, that takes care of all the electrical. You undo this arm right here, which is the steering linkage. And then over on this side, we've got two cables that come in and actuate right here, which one of them is the throttle and the other one is the shift linkage. And it looks like, let me just pull up on this. Oh yeah, that just unhooks. That's kind of neat. What does that do? I think this just unclamps, which allows you to pull these right out, I think. Yeah, so it looks like you just got to undo this nut here and then remove this one, and then that'll give you access to that nut down below for the other one. Alright, so this clip thing was pretty straightforward. Once you release it, then you can actually kind of move it down and it unhooks and flips up out of the way. And I already removed the top cable. That was easy. This one, I just unscrewed the nut and found out that there's this funky little retainer on the top here, so I wanted to video this so I can show myself when I go to put this back together, if I get to that point, how this went on there. So this little piece sat down inside there with this pointy part pointing towards the rear of the motor. And once you take that off, then it looks like that just pops out of there. Oh yeah, that's pretty easy. Which allows this to come free. It's actually a plastic bushing that's right here. I think the plastic bushing I can put back inside here and close that clip maybe and keep that all together. That's probably a good idea. Doesn't look like it matters which way that goes in. How did that hook in there? Well, worry about that some other time. Oh, so there's a funky washer or something behind there. So I guess I could just put this right back on there for safekeeping. Last thing I had to disconnect was the steering linkage, and that was pretty straightforward. It just threads. It's a stud that threads into the lever or mount on the bottom there. All right, this outer shroud right here is pretty much just loose and unsupported. The only thing that's keeping it on at all is these 4 bolts on the bottom. So I'm going to take this off now because I don't want to break it when I'm trying to lift this thing. This is my son Mark. There were some rusted bolts that had nuts on the inside, and the only way to get to them was to crawl in. Crawl in underneath there with all the dirty rotten leaves and everything. Mark volunteered. So he says there's a dead rat in there, but
put me in the picture.
We don't believe him. We don't believe him. All right, Mark. I suppose you want help getting out of the boat now, huh? No?
Yeah, Peter.
All right, well, it's getting near dusk and I've got a problem. I've got a bolt that is right below where this clamp pushes on the hull. They put a bolt through with a nut. They put 4 bolts with nuts through. 2 of them were down below. You had to go underneath the back there where I set my son. And the 2 on the top. Now the one on the other side was offset enough that I could get to it pretty easily. This one is right behind the bracket, and what happened was, because they didn't have any kind of a plate or anything to shore this up, this actually cracked the fiberglass and pushed it in. So this, where my finger's going right here, is actually a pushed in section behind this part right here. So this nut is actually kind of obscured or hidden by the fiberglass, so I can't get a wrench on it. And I can't try and put a socket on it because, well, obviously the bracket here is in the way, and I can't take the bracket off because that's part of the motor mount. So that's going to come off when the motor's free, and the motor won't come free until this bolt is out. So it's kind of a catch-22. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I might end up having to grind the bolt head off the other side of this, but I'm realizing that that's not really going to do anything for me because I can't push the bolt through this way because it's going to hit the bracket. So I'm not sure how I'm going to handle this just yet. Of course, the whole time I was talking, I didn't have the camera in position. But right here is what I'm talking about. That's not good. Hey everybody, it's the next day, and I thought I was going to pull the motor off today, but I ran into a problem. I got my loader all set up. I got my chain ball hanging from the hook on the loader, so it's the perfect setup for lifting. The issue is going to be actually hooking onto the motor. And I thought maybe I'd be able to wrap this with straps in some way and lift it, but it just seems like no matter where I think about putting a strap, I'm worried about there being a pinch point that's going to either bend or break linkage on here or do something, damage something. Because this whole lower cowling right here is pretty much just kind of like floats loosely. The only thing that keeps this in position is when these side covers that are already removed are bolted onto the motor, and then they bolt to this. So this kind of hangs off of the covers that are already removed, and they're only cast aluminum covers. So you can't think for a minute that you're going to like hook onto this and try and lift this whole motor because you're just asking for trouble. So that's not even an option. So if memory serves me, the way you're supposed to lift these motors is from the flywheel, from actually the crankshaft. I'll show you what I mean. So I think the guys who service these things for a living actually have a special tool, which is actually, I'll call it a tool, but it's actually a part that would thread into this, where this recessed hole is on the flywheel. There are fine threads in there, and they go down about probably half an inch or so. And I think by design, what you're supposed to do is thread this part into here, and then I think the part would actually have a hook or something on it so that you could hook onto and lift, so that you're actually putting all of the lifting force on the crankshaft, which that actually must put a lot of force on the bearings of the crankshaft, but again, I think by design that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Now, there might be a temptation to rig something up to the outer edges and grab onto the flywheel and lift by the flywheel. But the difference is, even though when you thread into this part right here, you're putting the force on the flywheel, you're putting the force on the flywheel so close to the center of where it hooks, where it bolts onto the crankshaft, that you're not putting force on there in a way that's going to want to distort or bend the flywheel. If you grab from these outer edges here, well, then the danger would be that you're actually going to flex this flywheel and possibly warp it, or crack it, I guess. But more than likely, it would bend before it would break. So then I thought, well, maybe if I took these bolts out right here that hold the flywheel on, and then made a plate with holes in it that I could bolt back down, so that basically these bolts would go through the plate and into the flywheel, and then have the plate maybe be a right angle with a hole in it. Then I might have the ability to lift it and do some lifting that way. But then I'd be lifting from like this point here. I'd be kind of pulling on it in a different way, and I'm just not sure that would be even worth going through all that effort. I say that, and yet what I'm actually contemplating doing is turning a piece that will thread in here. So if I turn a piece that will thread in here, first of all, it has to be almost like a socket or hollow, so that it can actually go down in here over this nut that holds the flywheel onto the crankshaft, which actually begs the question, what exactly is the purpose of these bolts? What do they hold on? They don't seem to really... Well, that's interesting. Why are these bolts here? If the flywheel is pressed onto a tapered shaft on the end of the crankshaft and then held on with this big nut, what's the purpose of this ring of bolts? That's weird. Well, let me see. I got my thread gauges. Let me see what the pitch is of this thread.
Is this videotaping?
Yep, sure is.
Oh, I sound like an idiot.
You said it, not me. All right, so it's 16 threads per inch. I go online and see if I can find that specification somewhere. I'm curious what it's saying. Maybe I can find out what the OD is of this. It'll make it a lot easier if I'm going to try and turn a piece. 16 threads per inch. Sweet 16. That's how I'll remember that. All right, I've decided I'm going to make, or at least attempt to make, a lifting tool for the Mercury outboard. I went online and I found out that the actual correct way to lift these outboard motors is in fact by threading in a special tool into the top of the flywheel. The top of the flywheel has those threads in it that I showed earlier, and turns out those are 16 threads per inch, and it's a 1.5 inch by 16. And there's actually a couple different tools available to lift that. One of which is commonly found on eBay for $30 and up, and it's basically it's a sleeve that threads into there that has a ring attached to it, and that's your lifting ring. That tool is only for lifting. That's all it does. The second tool I found for actually as little as $20 online is another person is making and selling a tool, which is basically it's a sleeve that has the correct threads on the outside, and it's a flywheel puller. So you thread that in, you just thread that outer sleeve into the part there. It's got flats on the top here, so you can put a wrench on it and tighten it in. And then it's got a threaded hole on the end here, and the threaded hole has a 5/8 by, I forgot what the pitch of the thread. I think it's like 5/8 18 or something like that. It's got a fine thread bolt that threads in there, and what happens is when you tighten that bolt, because this outer part would be threaded into the flywheel, and the bolt as it threads in is pushing on the end of the crankshaft, it will actually pull the flywheel. Now all you have to do is take that bolt out, screw an eye bolt into there, and you've got a nice lifting ring out of the same tool, so that you could actually do two things with that tool. The problem is the thread of the bolt that they put in there is not a thread that's commonly found on most eye rings. Even Fastenal doesn't show it in their catalog. I did find some eye rings on eBay that had that thread. So if I wanted to, I could buy the flywheel puller for I could buy that flywheel puller for the $20, and then buy the eye ring that threads into it for another 10. And for $30, I would have a combination flywheel puller / lifting lifting ring.